And hello, it's Thrive Studio tonight, and you won't believe what I just did. Amy Stewart is with us tonight, and we are just so fortunate. So some of you I know already know Amy. So welcome, Amy. How are you on a Tuesday evening in a little bit of winter Sydney?
I'm sensational, Carrie. Thank you so much for asking. A little bit of a croak to the voice tonight. I've been talking way too much today, perhaps too few many webinars and a little too much coaching. So please bear with me. I'm sure we can hang out for 20 minutes. We'll be fine.
We can. It could be worse. It could be a virus. So not that I need to trivialise that too much, but you just keep doing what you're doing. And I hope everyone who's with us tonight, you've got your drink of choice, whether it's something smooth and cold or whether it's something to warm up your hands and feet and the backbones, because it is a little bit windy, and you can see by both of us scarves and jackets on tonight. So hope you are all thriving as best you can this week. Now, as always on Thrive Studio, the reason that we are doing this is to extend this notion of our collective conversation, our collective intelligence about how we are coping with massive change. And for some of us, those challenges that we've had have been absolutely layer upon layer upon layer. And I know that I've had my children. I now have grandchildren, but I do know that Amy has two beautiful primary school age children at home. So when we talk thriving, when we talk adapting and changing to meet whatever our new normal is, I know Amy has been in the thick of things. Would that be right, Amy?
You could say that, Carrie. Yeah, I think in fairness, though, so many others are navigating their own realities, and the next normal, as everybody's starting to call it. So, lots of pressure cooker moments mixed in with some amazing moments, of course. Yeah.
And one of the things, thanks, Amy. One of the things that we ask our guests is, how have you managed to make sense of total disruption? Make sense of the way we're feeling, make sense of the relationships that still need to be nurtured, still need to be fostered, for those that we love, for those that we work with, for those that we're about to educate. And I know, Amy, you have a long history, a beautiful career as being an educator of excellence. So would you like to give us a snapshot of some of the experiences you've had in your life to date?
Of course I can. Thank you for asking. So I guess the education thing kind of fell in a little bit later, and let me firstly clarify what we mean by the educator side of things. Certainly in the adult education space, and these days in also some of the community work that I do, but absolutely in the adult space, or from a graduate sort of level upwards in terms of age. So, when I finished uni, I thought I didn't actually really know what I'd do. I did a commerce degree way back when, and then landed on a Kentucky tour bus. And I was a Kentucky tour guide for a period of time. And that's when I started to unravel the appetite that I had for engaging an audience. Yeah. Didn't mind being behind a microphone per se, and therefore started on this extraordinary journey of moving through a fairly lengthy career in corporate world, in learning and development, organisational development, and in more recent years, running my own business and co-founding the Collaborative with you and two other brilliant women. So that's where we find ourselves today. Yeah.
To date. And it's a joy. Both you and I have been working with adults. I'm a trained teacher, spent a decade at home with my 4 babies, and that at the time that's what we did, that's what we chose to do, and came back into a role as a parent educator, which was pretty cutting edge in those days, and then moved through a variety of responsibilities and roles. And you're right, we have co-founded an EI collaborative, and that's really exciting work, because everywhere we turn at the moment, people are talking about how do we treat each other with respect? How do we get the best possible performance out of ourselves and others? And what is our responsibility? What can we do? What can we leave perhaps behind us? Because we're a long time in the box, as far as I'm concerned. So life is very precious for me. But what can we leave behind us that our children, our grandchildren, the next generations, and anybody else across the world will feel a little breeze from? And that's where I like to think, and that's a bit of a metaphor, really, that butterfly effect. So we're part of that, Amy, you and I.
Indeed, we are.
So look, one of the first questions I do ask my guests is, what really makes your heart sing in the work that you do? And now we have an extra hemisphere, perhaps, or an extra world that we've now transversed into. So is there something that makes your heart sing, that gets you still out of bed each day, in whether we're in turmoil or whether we're in a good place? Because let's face it, we've all been up and down a fair bit over the last couple of months.
Yeah. The heart singing bit, honestly, we could spend a whole bunch of time talking about it. And when you kindly sent me the questions in advance, I had to kind of obviously funnel down some of my broader thinking.
Yeah.
So definitely, in terms of my philosophy that I uncovered a number of years ago, and just kind of realized that I could retrofit what I had done into the model, otherwise known as Ikigai, Ikigai, which is a Japanese, it's a Japanese model, it's a Japanese way of thinking around combining. There's 4 elements that we combine, and it, at the heart of it, is all around being able to combine what we love, what we're good at, what the world needs, and how we can earn an income. And I consider myself extraordinarily lucky to have landed in that space, for now anyway, and that particularly is working in a human-centered capacity, working with individuals and teams and organizations, whether that's one-on-one, whether that is in more of a team or a leadership capacity, to ultimately be kind, be human-centered, and bring about successful organizations, both in a people-centric way, in a not-for-profit way, and ultimately to create a legacy, I guess we could say. The biggest thing that I talk with, again, with individuals or groups, is around how are you talked about when you're not in the room?
Yes.
How do you want to be talked about when you're not in the room?
Yeah.
And that can be quite figuratively, speaking, or it can be quite literally. So there's a lot of unpacking in that space, and I'm the lucky one who gets to ask people questions like that and then gives them the space to think about it.
And really what you've talked about, I love the Japanese concept, and there's a whole, the great thing about it, though, that gives it some really some substance, is that there's a whole lot of research that's being done on the blue zones across the world, where mortality is very strong, and the average age of inhabitants of certain islands on Japan are over 100. They live for a long time, and the essence of their life is about community, is about sharing, is not about taking more than you need. And I just find it absolutely beautiful. And I love the four quadrants, or actually see them in circles. The way, what is it that I've got that the world needs? Fantastic question. What can we be paid for? Well, we all have to be paid. What does the world need right now? And that's what our conversation is all about tonight. What is it that we need now? So thanks for starting us off on such a great in such a great way. I often look to other cultures for inspiration, and also for history. And about 18 months ago, I did teach in China, and we went from major cities out to the regions. So we were not in large cities like Beijing and Shanghai. We were down in Chengsha and Lujiang, and it was absolutely beautiful, not being able to speak any Chinese. The teachers that we were working with were all teachers of English. So they really had quite a difficult time in understanding the fluency and the speed of my English and my intonation and some of my references or how I spoke, the way that I constructed a sentence and some of the ideas, because I'll often talk in metaphor or we'll use imagery and symbols and things. So each afternoon we got a selection of Chinese culture. So we had to get down and dirty and play the games, and it was absolutely fantastic. So tell me though, in playing all the games, you would have been playing a few games with your children at home over the last few months as we have picked up our online learning. So I'm not quite sure what your school would have called it. Every people, lots of the jurisdictions that I speak to have a different name for learning at home during COVID. So there would have been plenty of games, Amy. There would have been plenty of time that's not been spent in lining up, having a break, waiting for other kids in the classroom, because your two would have been home with you and your partner.
Yeah, and we, to be real honest, we probably could have called it a lot of inappropriate things in amongst all of that craziness as well. We'll leave that for another conversation. Games for sure, yeah. And to have, whilst a fair chunk of that time was elements of pressure cooking. No one denies that, and very much in our household as well as many others. But in amongst all of that were these beautiful insights that we got to get into the intricacies of their day in, day out learning. So everything from a worksheet to an activity to an assignment, all of the stuff that ultimately happens. I love to ask the kids when we pick them up from school or when we pick them up from after school care, what was your favourite thing about today? And being a person who uses open-ended questions all day in my work, sometimes it works with the kids, sometimes it doesn't. So for us to be able to get an insight into that, because we were sitting with them and doing that stuff, was absolutely fascinating. And I underestimated that. It was upon reflection that I really recall how valuable that was. In the moment, I probably honestly didn't realise it, or we didn't realise it. Lots of games, absolutely. We played. We've now created this little, I guess, tradition. Probably not tradition is the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. That we play it pretty much every night before bed, and that's either around the coffee table or we take a plastic platter onto our bed and we do it on bed. Matilda, she's our youngest. She turned 6 recently. For her birthday, she got Flip. Did you even know there was a Flip?
Oh, I did.
If not, you have to get it. And I know your bubbers, your grandchildren would adore it, particularly the ones who are closer to Matilda's age. It's brilliant. So it just flips it, literally flips it. I'll leave it there. Go and Google it, go and buy it.
I'll investigate.
And for potentially some of our listeners and watchers tonight as well. Really good fun.
The reason I asked you about the games is because when you described, what you learnt about your kids' learning and the structure, it's really learning design, isn't it, that we're talking about? And I was reflecting with another colleague today about what we've really been part of action learning sets. We've been part of experiments and research whilst this is all happening. And I would love to know, and I hope there will be some longer term research done on this, and there probably is, about what it is we're going to keep from the isolation strategy that the whole world has been under, and what it is that we're going to be able to say, hey, that's not working anymore, that's not meeting our needs, we're going to toss that away. And I'm quite excited in a way to wonder and hope that there could be a few changes. So that's just me. And hopefully no one says you're a Pollyanna, Carrie, but I think we have a red hot opportunity, a red hot shot to let go of some things that haven't been working as well, because we've reclaimed back some family time. We've reclaimed time to just get out, walk alongside each other, take the dog for a walk, whatever it is. And that's precious. And I really hope that that does maintain that maintains itself, that we're not willing to give that up.
Yeah, I agree. The kids now, they used to beg us to walk to school on the days that, I wasn't racing out the door at 6:45 and dropping them at before school care. We're not doing that sort of stuff anymore. So now they used to beg us to walk to school. Now they beg us to get in the car because we walk every day. How cool is that? That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a few little quotable quotes that become the go-to that have come up. Oh, if we're looking at, you've been working virtually with many groups, and your voice is testament to that. Whether it's one-on-one coaching, whether it's webinars, whether it's small teams that you've worked with. What have you noticed about leadership in all this? Have you noticed anything? Because I actually am of the belief that leaders are revealing themselves in this situation, and just some observations, because I think it's very easy for us to jump in and profess what we know or we think to be true. But now we've had a chance to be observant as well as feeling deeply about how things have affected our values, our beliefs, and our assumptions. So, any thoughts on leadership?
Indeed. Great question. So many. I am observing. I'm normally a religious observer of behaviours anyway. Probably now dialed up, and the volume control is different now because we're observing in different ways. We're potentially not hearing as much, or we're hearing differently, and we're watching differently, of course. So it was just funny enough, this morning I was delivering a program on leadership essentials, and we spoke about some of literally the essentials of those who are fairly green when it comes to leadership. And some of the stuff that we talk about, and some of the challenges that some of our brand new leaders or leaders who've been leading for a while but probably needed a bit of a refresher on some of the thinking, what they're most challenged with. And communication sits at number one. There's probably no surprises. So those leaders who are naturally really good at communicating, that has come to the fore now more than ever. And those who have struggled with communication are now being significantly challenged because their usual communication methods have been changed and flexed and limited. So whether that's written, whether that's verbal, whether that's any of the other obviously elements of communication that we would take on board. The genuine concern for other human beings has been quite phenomenal. I was actually lucky enough to, and quite humbled to be able to observe and participate in a webinar today as a watcher, not a deliverer, with Ronnie Khan, the founder of Oz Harvest, and she spoke. I've not heard her speak before in the flesh per se, and she spoke. It was a sort of an entrepreneur group that I do some work with, and she was speaking. I've actually written that down because I don't remember it enough yet, but I've been reflecting on it all afternoon. She spoke about, the two most successful things that she's used from a leadership perspective, or she's observed from a leadership perspective, and that is that the success of Oz Harvest has been extraordinary people. And the second part is be committed to the good with no harm to people or planet. How cool is that? So, and this will be right up your alley, Carrie. Let's live in a community where we, in other words, all of us, can thrive and survive. So again, we could talk about that for a really long time. They've been through extraordinary challenges in recent times, and I won't go into all of them, but some of the stuff that I've read and also listened to around, when the Melbourne Convention Centre, just the Melbourne Convention Centre on its own closed, in that one period, we need to consider that 500,000 meals a year go to Oz Harvest as a result of surplus food from just the Melbourne Convention Centre, let alone all of the other surplus food providers around the country. When everybody was panic buying at all of our shops and supermarkets, the surplus food went down. Their charity event that they run, which is one of their paramount ones for the year where they bring in 3 million, had to be canned. So she just absolutely coined extraordinary people and that other thinking there. So I think
Yeah.
we're in a really nice place to be able to bring some of that to life with what we do.
Well, it's all around that. Those examples are all around us because there was a post on the weekend around the feeding the homeless in at Martin Place that has been closed down each weekend with varying reasons. So this time, when I said earlier before that I think it's like action research and that we're here in the middle of this. We've got to be more observing of human behaviour, human response, and then looking at how we lead through this, because there's a real difference between leading and managing. And usually in a crisis, the research and all the literature is saying to us, a lot of leaders will go to management in a crisis.
Yeah.
And then they go to leadership for response and then progress or change. So that's a great, thanks for sharing that. That would have been a lovely webinar to be on today.
It was nice. It was short but sweet. It was really, really awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Weren't too zoomed out. Oh, and look, you know what? If you had the microphone and we had the world at our fingertips, basically we do have. Technology has been a real gift for us all, even though we may be complaining about being zoomed out and not being able to touch somebody, the tactile sense of touch and being near someone. It's still given us a chance to go. I've been around the world in the last couple of months. It's been amazing. So in a way, I've been able to dampen or just sit on it, just calm down. It's cool. You're getting your trips in. You're getting to meet other people. But if we had the microphone today, Amy, you and I, what's the message you'd want to give out at this point in time? What do you think it might be?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. You've got me there. Just to put it into one thing is to, I guess, leverage off what we just said. Observe, watch, listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth. We have a gift in that particular space. And I don't mean we as in you and I mean we all do.
Yeah.
Again, figuratively speaking, whatever our reality of the watching and listening and of observing, let's be really mindful of what that means. Surround yourselves with good people, whether that's family, whether that's friends, connect with others. And my biggest and my favourite F word, as I often call it with groups, is feedback. Provide feedback. Ask for feedback. Ask people who you know will give you really honest feedback. Ask people who know have your back, so that you are seeking a really nice mix of constructive as well as positive feedback. And the best way for us to do that is actually start giving it. How can we possibly ask to receive it if we can't necessarily give it? So that would absolutely be my biggest thing. Be kind to ourselves and practice mindfulness. I am waking up all of the time in the middle of the night at the moment. My brain is way switched on. So, my 4-2-6 breathing, my 5 senses, all of the stuff that you can reach out to both Carrie and I about any time.
Beautiful.
We can talk about that kind of stuff. And my last thing there would be, let's be really grateful. We are extraordinarily grateful. I am extraordinarily grateful to be sitting in a home in Sydney in Australia right now. I think, Sydney or New Zealand, Australia or New Zealand are probably the 2 best picks across the world. How lucky are we? Things have changed significantly from the work that we get to do day in, day out. From a physical sense, from a financial sense, all of that stuff. There is food on the table and I have a roof over my head and I'm extraordinarily lucky.
And we're, listeners, you would agree, we are extraordinarily lucky to have Amy with us this evening. Amy, when I did the post for this, I led with coming out of the fog. Somehow, sometime, somewhere. And I feel for myself in the last two weeks or so that's what I've been able to do. And in talking to other people and listening to them, that's exactly what a lot of us are feeling, even though, you think the fog season might be over, and it's very likely that if the conditions are right, that fog will come in, settle in overnight and be there when you wake up in the morning. And our thriving doesn't necessarily mean you have to be happy and frivolous and laughing and joyous all the time. Our thriving means we know ourselves, we know what we can do for ourselves. And when we are really not able to do that, we go to the people that surround us, that as you say, have our back, because thriving, I think, is something that we develop. It just doesn't happen. There's connotation around the language and the definition, but it really is very intimate. It's internal. It's all about yourself. And I'm so pleased you mentioned the mindfulness, because there has been, I think, exponential growth in people looking for solitude, getting to know themselves and how they react, recognizing, when you need your breathing, when you need the walk, when you need to actually get that phone up and pull up all those pictures of those beautiful family members that you have, or a great memory. There's so many things that we can do. But our gratitude this evening is that we have the opportunity to do this. So I've got to say thank you so much. Listeners, if you would like to know more about what Amy does, what's your best contact, Amy?
Oh, thank you, Carrie. There's a few ways. So by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn, Amy Wilson Stewart. That's Wilson with 2 L's. That happens to be my maiden name. That's kind of a legacy of my previous work. Welcome to jump onto my website, amystewart.com.au, or reach out to us at the EI Collaborative. .com.au. So that's the EI standing for Emotional Intelligence, collaborative.com.au. Otherwise, reach out to Carrie. She's your beautiful host. She's your point of contact, and she can always point you in the right direction. So thank you so much, and thank you very much for having me tonight. And thank you so much for joining us, for those who've tuned in as well.
And thanks, Amy. Listeners, it's great. I'll be back next Tuesday night. Before we started, I actually had Amy's favourite song at the moment on, and I accidentally touched my phone and it slid to the next song. So if you're curious, get on to Spotify or your favourite music source. Tilted by Christine and the Queens might be worth listening to as our gift to you. So I'm Carrie Benedette. This is Thrive Studio. You can find me on all socials. Pop onto my website. There's some brand new media, some great tips, and there's lots that we can do with each other. So till next time, go gently, go well, because your thriving matters. Bye for now. Thanks, Amy.
Bye-bye. Bye.